I, 35F, have 2 kids, 17M/F twins, and one stepdaughter, 18, who I met when she was 11. The other day, I was at my parents' house going over some estate planning as I am the executor. While reviewing, I saw my folks had split their assets to be half for my 2 siblings and I and the other half for their grandkids, all to be distributed evenly. My stepdaughter was included. When I asked them about this, they said they wanted to be fair. Their estate isn't super large, but the sum would be substantial, think new car. I told my parents that while generous of them, I didn't think it would be necessary and would be better to split between their 5 grandkids. When we got home, my husband said he overheard what I said and that I was being an AH for alienating his daughter. I told him my reasoning was because she is the only child/grandchild/niece on both her parents' sides and that she would be set. Her grandparents own multiple properties, her uncles are fairly well off and live in a HCOL area, and well, she's the only kid and it's not looking like, at least in his side, that she'll have any cousins. Plus, their collective net worth is substantially more than my side. I also asked him if his parents included my kids in their estate, but he refused to answer. He said I was being an H and accused me of not caring about her future. I think I was doing the right thing by looking out for my kids and their cousins. Ida? Edit. I was told to include this in the post. 1. I didn't argue with or pressure my parents to make a change. I simply mentioned that I don't feel it was necessary for her to receive a monetary amount. 2. My mom plans on giving her a set of family heirloom jewelry that is her birthstone. I think this is quite thoughtful. I'm not a big jewelry person and she has other sets for the other girls in the family, so I feel this is okay. 3. My parents have seen her about 3-5x a year since I met her. For my nephews and my kids do not have active relationships with their biological father sides. My niece is a new mom and works at a restaurant. I feel that financial inheritance would be more impactful for them even as such a small amount. 5. I know my SD is set to inherit at least 2 houses in a major US city with HCOL. I found this out a while back after my husband asked me to help him organize his office. I had to read through papers to know how to file them accordingly. The paper was a certified copy and was drafted soon after we married. My kids were not included. I am not sure if it has been updated. I did not ask him about it at the time because I did not have an issue with it. 6. There is distance in the relationship, but I don't feel it's my fault. I can explain this. When I met her mom for the first time, she made it very clear that I wasn't her mom. I didn't see this as an issue because I did not want to overstep, and as a mom myself, I could see where she was coming from and respected her request. But as time progressed, our opportunity to spend time together became less frequent. First, my husband had every other weekend visitation. Became less frequent as she became a teenager because she wanted to spend the night with friends, hang out, etc., which I see as normal teenager behavior. The other piece is that we were never invited to be included in major celebrations for her. We usually celebrated birthdays with her a week after because we weren't invited. My husband was, just not us. She's also never spent Thanksgiving or Christmas with us because her mom wanted those days. Again, which I saw as fine because that's her only child. My husband would spend holidays with her at her mom's house, which I encouraged because I knew the importance of father/daughter connections. We also were not invited to her HS graduation. I think she's a beautiful and brilliant young woman and care for her tremendously. But it's challenging to develop deep, meaningful relationships with people you have little contact with. 7. For people putting me in the category of the evil stepmother, saying that I see her as other, don't think that I haven't been trying since the beginning. I include her in every way I can in the times that she is with us by doing things like teaching her my family recipes, taking her shopping for clothes so that she doesn't have to bring things back and forth, and attending every school athletic event that I could. I have tried to include her in family vacation planning, but was told by her mother that unless the vacation occurred on a weekend we're scheduled to have with her, then she would not allow us to have the time. This limited our options to local weekend trips, but even then, her mom comes up with some reason she can't join, including surprise trips to another state. I even suggested a family cruise in lieu of a honeymoon to celebrate our new family, but was blocked by her mom. My husband is allowed to take her on extended vacations as long as it's just the two of them. I have tried to be flexible in accommodations around holidays by postponing things like Christmas morning so that she can be included. This created frustration in my kids because they felt like they shouldn't have to put their lives aside to accommodate for her. One year, when the holiday occurred on one of our planned weekends, I came up with the suggestion of celebrating Christmas on Christmas Eve so we could do the full family thing. My kids weren't thrilled, but they understood. In the end, we didn't end up spending any time with her, as her mom told us that she planned on having a dinner party on Christmas Eve and needed my stepdaughter to help her prepare. When the time came for college applications, I was ecstatic to be asked by my stepdaughter to help her with the applications, but soon after was told that her mom hired a professional to help her get into her top choice schools and I was no longer needed. I have tried to have a bond with her with the little time that I have. I have consistently brought up to my husband that I feel like we needed more time with her to help build our relationship, at the very least by him maintaining his every other weekend schedule. He has told me that ultimately her mom is her mom and she determines her schedule and how she spends her time. He has also expressed that he fears that if he undermines her mom, then he might lose the time and relationship that he does have with her, and I do not want to be the reason for any sort of break in their relationship. His time/relationship with her hasn't changed, so maybe he doesn't see the need for me/my kids to be involved. But if he doesn't advocate for us, then what am I supposed to do? Major update. I haven't had the opportunity to have a discussion with my husband about all of this, as I was waiting to speak with my therapist to get advice on the best way to approach the conversation. However, I did receive a phone call this morning from my father-in-law, who I see as an absolute angel of a man. Apparently, my husband told his mom about our argument and my mother-in-law went off, and this is how my father-in-law found out about it. Phil asked me what my side of the story was, and I very emotionally told him everything as I listed in the OP. I told him it was not my intention to alienate SD in any way and that this whole thing has created a nightmare. After deep breath and slight pause, my FL said that I did the right thing. A few years ago, my FL suffered a series of strokes. He said that this prompted him to want to reevaluate the estate to make sure that everything was in order. He is quite old, close to 90, and has a lot of underlying health issues. He and my MIL share all of their assets, and she is also his POA in case anything happens, and because they have a family trust, he wanted to include her and his sons in the discussion. He told me that he brought up that he wanted to include my children in the family trust. He told me he proposed to allow for 10% of the trust's liquid assets to be split between my two kids to help get a start on life. He then said that my ML pushed back very hard, saying that because my children were not biologically related to their family and they should not be considered. When he asked my husband his thoughts on it, Phil said my husband's response was that it was best to keep it in the family, but that he would consider including us in his portion upon his passing if he and I were still together. Phil said this was a surprise because at that point we were still basically newlyweds, and was surprised a new husband would even think that way. My ML's response to that was unhappy, saying again we weren't blood and that this was a family issue. Because of the stress caused by the situation, and because of the recent strokes, Phil did not want to press things further. Phil said afterwards, he pulled my husband aside to find out more about what he had meant and to be assured that my kids would be included, and was basically told by my husband that he would do what was best for his family, and the conversation was dropped. Now, Phil said that he didn't push further at this point because he was getting tired from the conversation. But in light of what's happening and how my MIL and husband are responding behind closed doors, he felt it was necessary to let me know. He said that SD is set to be more than okay when it comes time, and that my husband has asked to tap into funds to pay for her college so she would not need to take out any loans, which he agreed to. He said he asked my husband if he would do the same for my kids, and that my husband's response was that he would ask when the time came, as my kids did not yet know what was going to happen regarding college admissions. Phil asked me if my husband and I had this conversation. I told him that my husband and I discussions about my kids' school was that they would need to take out loans, finish college, and then we would help pay off half of the loans together once they graduated. My husband has never suggested that anything for my kids' college would be paid for through his family trust. Phil was very apologetic, saying he should have pushed further as he loves us greatly and feels like he did not do enough. I told him it was not his fault and that he should not feel responsible for any of this, and that I did not want him to feel obligated to make any changes or bring it up with Phil/husband because I knew it would create additional stress for him and I wanted him to take care of his peace. He said though his desire would be to do so, that since his wife and he have a joint estate and that she is POA, that he felt like it would be more trouble than it's worth. He is blind and has a lot of mobility issues, so anything he does he is dependent on her. He also said that based on what he's heard on his side, he felt if he did update his will, then they would likely contest it, which would create a financial burden on my end, and he didn't want to create a negative situation. I told him again that it was okay and that we would be okay in life and that he was not responsible for anything that happened. I told him that my intention wasn't to be added to the trust, just to make a point to my husband, to which he said he understood and agreed. He apologized again, we told each other how much we loved one another, and he ended the call saying he considered me a person of integrity, which is a rare gem. Now that I have this information, I feel like this whole situation brought to light a lot of things I hadn't considered regarding my marriage. Also, writing out everything regarding how my husband navigated his relationship with his daughter/ex-wife really put things into perspective that makes me feel like we were never a priority for him. I'm not sure where to go from here. I plan to bring this all up with my therapist and talk it out to figure out what I should do. But I no longer feel like the for advocating for my biological family because my husband and his side have been advocating for theirs. FIL excluded. Final update. I've had many people reach out for an update, so here it is. I will be divorcing my husband. A lot has happened since I posted this. Thank you to those who responded and PM'd me kind words of encouragement that helped me take a step back and evaluate the dynamics of my marriage. This whole situation was much bigger than my comment to my parents. And despite everything, I am thankful it was a catalyst for truth rather than wasting more years of my life, love, and energy. First, I did try to speak to my husband. Whenever I brought it up, he said that he was over the issue. I mentioned to him that I thought it would be good for us to attend couples counseling to work out our differences with a neutral party to help us build a stronger relationship. He agreed, and I honored his requests for the type of counselor he wanted to see. However, when the appointment times came, he no-showed, citing that things came up at work or he wasn't feeling up to it. He missed a total of 3 appointments that I ended up attending myself. Counselor helped me recognize some potential covert narcissist traits based on my version of things. Counselor said they couldn't say for sure these things were true, nor could they provide a diagnosis, but from what I said and husband's no-shows, they felt it was highly likely. The frustration caused by all of this made me decide to take my kids to see my brother and his family for Halloween and the weekend. They live close to a city that goes all out for the holiday, and it's within a reasonable driving distance. My husband didn't object. I asked him if he had plans, and he said he was just going to work around the house and relax. He assumed that I would be with them the whole time. I took my twins, spent the night, and left them there hoping to be able to go home and have a serious conversation with my husband without distractions. On the way home, my daughter called me. She said that there was a post-Halloween party happening at our house and that both SD and her mom were there. She found out because one of her teammates from school's older sister had been invited. The sister is friends with SD. She also sent me screenshots from social media from the inside of our home where I could see who was in attendance. I didn't recognize anyone except husband, SD, and SD's mom. When I got home Friday evening, I pulled up to the house and it was filled with cars, including SD's mom. I didn't knock because I was already embarrassed as it is. Instead, I went to stay with a friend. The next morning, I went home to confront my husband. All the cars were gone except SD's mom. A woman who refused to knock on our door during pickup/drop-offs had spent the night at our home. When I let myself in, all three were eating breakfast around the table like a family. SD's mom gave me a big smile and exaggerated hospitality. SD tried hard to hide her giggles. Husband was bewildered. There was no evidence of a major party. SD's mom said she'd see him later and left with us. SD did not acknowledge me besides her laughing, which continued on her way out of the door. I'm not a confrontational person by nature, so I didn't stop them to question. I asked him to explain. He tried to say that they had just come over for breakfast. I told him I knew that wasn't the case because I drove by last night. He kept denying, but I pressed. I didn't tell him about the social media. He tried to gaslight me, saying that I lied to him about being gone all weekend. I told him I was taking the kids to see my brother for the weekend, but didn't say I'd be staying with them. I brought up that he lied to me about working around the house. He said the party was a last-minute request from SD's mom to host for her friends. All of the guests were her friends, and the amount of guests suggests it was likely planned the moment I mentioned I'd be going out of town. I questioned about her spending the night, but he said she slept in the guest bed because she was too drunk to drive, but I doubt it. I asked him if he even wanted to be married. He said yes, but that his priority is his daughter, who is now in college. I asked what that had to do with her mom and having parties in the home we share, especially now that she is a legal adult. He said that he will always love her as the mother of his child. We agreed early in our relationship that we wouldn't have kids as we'd essentially be starting over, so this statement hurt me on so many levels. I told him that his lies and mistreatment of me was over, that he never prioritized our marriage and always put his first family before us. He said I was delusional. I told him not to be home when I came back to get my stuff. I called my kids to tell them what happened. They said they weren't surprised. Apparently, they'd been feeling some type of was towards him for a while and felt they couldn't tell me because they knew how important marriage was to me. My parents were an example of what I wanted to have in my own life. I felt like shit for creating that kind of break with my kids. They were gracious and told me I deserved better. I told them they could come home or stay with my brother, and they decided to stay. But yes, I am the AH for prioritizing my marriage over my kids, and I will be setting up family therapy for us. I went and rented a 3-bedroom apartment the same day. The friend I stayed with the night before helped me pack my stuff and move over the weekend. Future ex-husband's whereabouts were unknown, but I can assume. During the move, I got a string of nasty texts from SD's mom saying that I was jealous that she had picked a good man who she conceived a baby with love with. A direct jab at the circumstances under which I had my kids. Their dad is an addict and not in the picture. She said I'd never have what they have. My understanding of the circumstances of their divorce was that she had an affair. When we first met, I explicitly asked if she was okay with me and him dating at that time. She said she had no issue and that she was glad he was happy. This was the same day as her comment about me never being mom to stepdaughter. She was also dating someone at the time. Once I got settled, I told my family about what happened, parents and siblings. They were livid, especially my dad. This is where he voiced that he had been sick of trying to include my husband/SD in family events just to be constantly stonewalled by them. They don't take blatant cruelty lightly, and her reaction to my walking in on their breakfast makes them see her as cruel. They said if she had shown even a bit of embarrassment or remorse, they would have thought differently of her. So yes, I'm the asshole for overlooking my future ex's treatment of me and my family, for delusionally thinking things would get better, for pouring into people who don't seem to GAF while I had love and support from my real family. I will say I don't blame my SD for this. She is her parents' child. Who knows what was said about me behind closed doors over the years? In that case, she is innocent. However, she is now an adult that can make her own choices. She can decide if she wants to participate in behavior that puts other people down. Maybe she's still young enough to be influenced under her parents' thumb regarding how she treats people. Maybe one day she will realize that she can speak up when she sees bullying behavior by members of her own family. But I won't be around to find out. I still talk to Myafil. He's been checking in on me regularly while MIL is out running errands. He's sorry for the circumstances but glad I stood up for myself. He told me he will help me in any way he can to make my transition easier. I said the best he can do for me is still be my friend. Now he tells me stories about his younger years instead of us talking about other parties involved. My kids like our new place. They said school is still doing okay and are looking forward to graduating. We decided to adopt a cat. Something we all wanted but put off because X hates them. Both have decided to pursue complementing trades and going into business together after college. They said they had been discussing it for a while. They had mentioned it to me before alongside a long list of other possible post-graduation plans, so I was aware of it as a possibility, but now they say it's the goal. I also told my parents that if they wanted to reconsider their will, then I wanted them to decide to do something that made them happy, even if it included SD. They said they had already been talking to a financial advisor after speaking with my brother since the time of our meeting mentioned in the original post. He encouraged them to enjoy their money now. They want to move to my paternal grandparents' home country where we have some extended family. Moving will save them a lot of money as the COL is much lower and he can buy land since my dad is a dual citizen. They said if it works out, they'll leave their house here for my sister and her boys to live in rent-free as long as she keeps up maintenance. They also mentioned the possibility of contributing to my niece going back to school so she doesn't have to work as a server much longer. All this planning on their end started just before the Halloween fallout. I told them I'm glad they're deciding to enjoy their money while they're still around. Husband has reached out several times begging me to reconcile, asking for marriage counseling, etc. I guess he thought I wasn't as serious as I was. Said he made a big mistake and put the blame on SD's mom/his mom for poisoning him regarding our marriage. Told him it was not my problem and that I hope he has the life he deserves. If I could tell my younger self something, it would be don't ignore the red flags. Things feel off or unfair, then they probably are. Don't prioritize people who couldn't care less about your feelings or overall well-being. People can change, but it's not your responsibility to help them. Invest that energy in yourself. I'm so glad I kept my job/income despite my husband's request for me to be a housewife. If I hadn't, I wouldn't have been able to leave as quickly as I did. Thank you all for listening. What do you think of the situation? What would you have done? Leave your opinion in the comments below.